Murray Sinclair, the Anishinaabe senator and renowned Manitoba lawyer who led the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, has died at the age of 73. Now, last month, his family shared on Facebook that he was unwell and in serious condition. And for more on him and his life, we're joined by Judith Sayers. She is president of the Nuu-chah-nulth Tribal Council, and Judith has been good enough to join us on short notice this morning. Good morning to you, Judith.
Yes, good morning, Stephen.
Our condolences on the loss, because I know that you worked very closely with Murray Sinclair. Tell me about that.
Well, I met Murray way back in 1982, 83, so I've known him for over 40 years.
Wow.
I was called to the bar, and we had just and so he was the vice president of the Canadian Indian Lawyers Association, as was, and I was the secretary treasurer. And we were to write a presentation to present to the Standing Committee on Indigenous Affairs, on self-determination. And I went to Winnipeg to meet with him, and we ended up talking and doing everything but writing the presentation, and had to go to Ottawa and write the presentation alone. So I always teased him about that, made him feel guilty. But I've known him, so many different things. Most recently, the Indigenous chancellors across Canada.
Yeah.
We're meeting regularly about pretendiism. I've known him, of course, through the TRC,
Yeah.
his work in the Senate. Like, Murray has done everything. He's touched every issue and so many lives. He's just one of those people that has made a huge impact on so many issues, so many people, governments. He really made a difference in this life.
He went to law school in Manitoba. In fact, he won a prize for civil litigation. And he said, I've got a quote here that said, "My ambitions for my career lay primarily in the field of politics. When I went to law school, it was to be a politician." He was a member of the Senate. I mean, he said he became disillusioned, though, with the justice system. On one occasion early in his career, a judge mistook him for the defendant and asked him to state the charges against him. Can you imagine?
I remember him telling that story. He loved that story.
And so, I mean, did he lose faith in the justice system then?
Well, I think, as you work in the justice system and the way they treat Indigenous people, you do become disillusioned because there's no equity, there's no justice. Things are tough.
Yeah.
And I think, maybe not just that incident, but many others that he did. I'm trying to remember if he did an inquiry as well into the justice system. And so, it all becomes disillusioning. But, I think his first dream of being a politician, he became a voice.
Mm-hmm.
He was a very strong, and he was hard hitting. He was
Yeah.
amazing in the way he made his points without breaking people's legs, or, it was just there. And he was able to do that so well.
What his legacy with the Truth and Reconciliation Commission and that report, I mean, how significant is that when it comes to reshaping the way Canada approaches Indigenous rights and reconciliation?
I think that it was a huge impact. I mean, today, everybody operates on the calls to action from the TRC in every area. It is something that has spawned reconciliation awards. It has put companies in different places. I mean, even BC Hydro has a reconciliation plan. That, like, there are just so many things that have arisen from that report.
Mm-hmm.
And, calling, people grading governments on how much they've actually achieved. And so it set a new standard, for reconciliation and working with Indigenous people in this country. So it was very significant.
And what about the progress that's been made on those calls to action? Do you know how he felt about it? Because there's been, a lot of talk, but a lot that still needs to be, worked on, even started in some cases.
Yeah, and he was very clear about that. Even, obtaining materials that were needed. Whenever he had an opportunity, he spoke out about things that weren't being done.
Yeah.
But I also heard him praising things that were done. So I think he was very fair in that way. But, definitely there's still a long road to go on
Yeah.
reconciliation. But with the foundation he helped set, the work is in progress. And I'm sure he felt good about that.
And that foundation and that work that is in progress and is going to continue, is it carrying forward his vision? And if so, I mean, what is that vision?
Well, I think his vision on reconciliation was to right the wrongs of the past. How do we make things better? How do we work better? How do we implement UNDRIP? How do we like he had a huge vision for the path forward for Indigenous peoples and non-Indigenous peoples. It's time, and that was his message. It's time that we did this. No longer can we fool around and do these things that don't help and benefit Indigenous people. And so I think he clearly laid that out in the calls to action. And, I think that's what we're marching forward with. And we'll continue to carry that legacy that he set up.
Hmm. He was Manitoba's first Indigenous judge. He led the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. I mean, how would you like people to remember him?
I would love to see people remember him as a kind, generous, giving person. He gave of his time, his efforts, his mind strategies, just that person who
Hmm.
did so much. He has a great family. I like to see people remembering a person as a person, and then all the accomplishments, make him what he is. But just the big heart that he had for people.
Judith, always a pleasure to speak with you. Thank you so much for the time this morning, especially on short notice.
Sure, no problem.
And again,
Good
our
to talk to you.
condolences. You take care. And it's Judith Sayers, the president of the Nuu-chah-nulth Tribal Council, Murray Sinclair, the Anishinaabe senator and renowned Manitoba lawyer who led the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, has died at the age of 73.